Awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, and Happy New Year. I wish the Vikings would have started out a little better, but hey, what are you going to do? So as you heard, I'm a sports nut. I've been a working member of the media for the past 25 years, working very closely with our Vikings, our Twins, our Wild, our Wolves, our Gophers. I've had a lot of misery over the past quarter century. Our teams kind of stink. But it's given me a very unique perspective, being in the locker room, and the press box, and the dugout, and the sideline. I've been able to meet some pretty interesting folks along the way. Now, my program this morning, The Champions Code, it's based specifically on two best-selling series of books that I've written. This top series, Raising Stanley, Raising Lombardi. This is all about what it took to hoist that trophy. I interviewed over 1,000 professional athletes and coaches for that series who all had one thing in common. They were all champions. They were all members of championship teams. And much like Jim Collins did in his iconic book, Good to Great, I was looking for the same sorts of trends and metrics and patterns and analytics that were common among those teams. The results were fascinating. Now, the bottom series is called The Code. Now, as you know in sports, we've got rules. There's black and white rules which have been designed to keep the game fair and honest, but mixed in between these black and white rules are some shades of gray. They're called unspoken, unwritten rules, or codes. And if you break these codes, well, there's consequences. This is what leads to fighting in hockey or getting drilled in baseball. So my program is really about winning with integrity. You're going to be tempted to take shortcuts along the way. And believe me, there's all sorts of sneaky, nefarious things athletes try to do to gain an edge. And we try and do them sometimes in business too, especially when times are tough. But being a champion, it's about doing the little things the right way. As I've learned, champions, the people who we like, the people who we trust, the people who just get it, they've got a very unique DNA. So I want to challenge you to think about your DNA. There was a big Harvard research study that came out years ago that talked about the #1 overall predictor of success across any line of business, and this is what it was. So I'd say you're not so much in the electrical energy consulting business, you're really in the relationship business. But it's not just about the number of Facebook or Instagram friends you have, it's really about the quality of those relationships. And that's what my program this morning is really all about. So my first question to you is, why would someone choose to do business with you or buy from you, or as a leader, be influenced by you? What's unique about you? What are the differentiators that really set you apart from everyone else? My mission this morning is to take a few things that aren't your business and make them your business. So I'm going to share with you 8 ideas. I know it's a crazy number. It's all the time you gave me. 8 ideas to drive sales, to drive morale, and generate momentum. Momentum is a living, breathing thing. We see it in sports. We see it in business. It's lightning in a bottle. And hopefully I can challenge you as leaders, as emerging leaders, to think a little bit differently. We all know the old cliche, people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. So today I want to give you a few tools for your toolboxes that will help you to build relationships to make your jobs easier, more productive, so you can have more fun, make more money, and that's what it's all about. So let's dive in. #1, it all starts, that's not good. That's never a good way to start out. Is my AV guy here? Hello. Now I'm going to be doing an interpretive ribbon dance for 55 minutes. Hope you guys are excited about that. Any hope for anything here? Let's see. Yes, there we go. Thank you. Great job. All right, let's dive in. #1, it all starts with passion. You can't fake passion. You either love what you do or you don't. You're either real and authentic or fake and phony, and that was my guy. Kirby Puckett, Game 6, 1991 World Series. I was there, man. I don't know if any of you were there. I'm still a little hungover from that night. It was amazing. But when I think of Kirby and I think of his DNA, it's that smile on his face which pretty much says it all. You know the old cliche, find a job you love and never work a day in your life? First one to the office, last one to leave. That was Kirby. Kirby had this amazing attitude, and it was infectious. I mean, everybody loved Kirby Puckett. He was magnetic. He could bend energy. You know, Kirby used to tell me that whenever he'd come to work at the old Metrodome, whether it was a game or practice, he'd come to the players' entrance in the back of the stadium, and they had these big doors. And Kirby called them stage doors, because he really felt like every day when he came to work, he was going to be up on stage performing. And he had that performer's mentality. So he had to get his mind right. So every day he would literally step aside and he would check his ego at the door. No kidding. He'd go over there, he'd close his eyes, and whatever issues or injuries he was dealing with that day, whatever drama was going on at home with his wife and kids, he said, you know what? I need to leave all that over there. Because when I walk through these doors, I got to bring it. It doesn't matter if I'm sick or tired or injured. My teammates are counting on me. This organization, these fans, they're counting on me. And when he walked in, it was like Hurricane Kirby had entered the room. I mean, that smile, it was unbelievable. He knew everyone's name. He knew your wife's name, your kid's name. He was always playing practical jokes, keeping everyone loosey-goosey, having fun. They called Kirby a gym rat because they just couldn't get rid of him. He'd come in on his days off to hang out with the beer vendors, the parking guys, the ticket takers. He never thought he was better than anyone else. He just loved his job. If someone was having a bad day, Kirby was always the first guy to come over, pat you on the butt. Come on, man, hang in there. They pay us to play baseball. Passion. Look, what are you really passionate about? See, here's the thing I've learned. If you're not really, truly, authentically passionate about what you do, then you might need to think about what you do. Because people choose to do business with, to buy from, to be led by people who genuinely really love what they do. And this is why I thoroughly enjoy hanging around professional athletes. It's like the fountain of youth. These people love what they do. They're obsessed. They do it for free. Shh. From the time they were little kids throwing a ball, to high school, college, the minor leagues, to become a professional, an all-star, a Hall of Famer, to get to the tip of that pyramid, and to stay there year after year after year. It's about passion. Look, maybe you're really passionate knowing that you are literally helping to create the American dream. What you build, the consulting services you do in these 4 divisions, it's profound. Thank you for what you do. You probably don't get told that enough. But maybe this is just your day job, and that's okay. And your real passion is hunting, or fishing, or golfing, or traveling, or spending time with your kids or grandkids. That's great. But that means you better be pretty damn good at your day job. So you got enough time and money and freedom and the ability to say no to things you don't want to do. Otherwise, you're just pushing the rock up the hill. So today I want to start things off by asking you about the intersection of passion and purpose. What is it that you love about your job? You don't have to love everything, but why'd you get in this business? Why'd you stick around? All these things matter. Today I'm here to challenge you to think a little bit differently about how and why you lead. Number 2, be generous. Why? Because we like to do business with and be led by givers, not takers. That is Wayne Gretzky. Full disclosure, I had a full-blown stage 5 man crush on this guy as a kid. I'm not going to lie to you, it was awkward. I had posters of Wayne all over my bedroom walls. I've gotten to know him later in life. He couldn't be nicer. You know, as I learned, Wayne was the NHL's all-time leader in goals, and he was the all-time leader in assists. But he had twice as many assists than goals. I asked him about that one time, and he said, you know, a goal made one guy happy, but an assist made 2 guys happy. Wayne was a giver. I don't know if you can teach it, but I know we love to do business with and be led by giving people. My daughter scored her first hat trick in soccer a few summers ago, 3 goals. She also had an assist. And on the car ride home, I said, honey, I'm most proud of the assist. She said, why, Dad? I said, because great passes, they come straight from the heart. I mean, you have to want to sacrifice for the unknown, right? I mean, she could have scored that 4th goal. She was wide open, right at the doorstep, but for some reason, at the last second, she stopped. She turned 90 degrees. She passed across the goal line to her buddy, Carly. Carly hadn't scored in like 2 seasons. It was awesome. They fist bumped, they high-fived, they hugged it out. They talked about it afterwards over ice cream for about a half an hour. It was the greatest goal ever, as I learned, Dad. But that was the day I was really proud of my kid because I learned that she was a giver. And I don't think you can teach it. I just think it's in your DNA, in your soul, to want to give and to serve and to help others. And that's what Wayne's DNA was all about. You see, Wayne wore the C on his sweater for the Edmonton Oilers. And that meant as the captain, it was his responsibility to lead by example. That meant being the first guy in the ice every practice, the last guy off the ice every practice. I asked Wayne one time about his legacy, how he'd want to be remembered when it was all said and done. He thought about it and he said, I guess I'd just like to be remembered as the hardest worker in practice, the guy who helped his teammates the most. Wow. When your leader sets that kind of a tone, it's amazing how it just trickles down throughout the entire organization and filters back up. In the media, when teams win, everybody's fat and happy. It's awesome. But when teams lose and there's problems and there's drama, we want to talk to the leaders and we want answers. And after every game, no matter how bad the loss, there was Wayne, front and center at the podium, answering everyone's questions, forthright, direct, fully accountable, no excuses. Wayne, what's the problem, man? The team's in a slump. We're not hitting our numbers. What's going on? You know what Wayne would say? Guys, you're right. I'm sorry. I need to work harder. I'm going to come in earlier Monday morning, try and get things figured out. Please be patient with us. But don't blame those guys. This is all on me. Wayne would never throw his teammates under the bus, no matter what, even if it was their fault. You see, he understood as a team leader, it was his job. His purpose was to help make them better. So if the team wasn't playing well, that wasn't on them. That was on him. This guy actually enjoyed assists more than goals. Who does that? But Wayne understood the power of the assist to help someone, to mentor someone. If one of his teammates was in a slump, Wayne would stay after practice. They'd shoot a couple hundred pucks together. If the guy was homesick, Wayne would call a players-only meeting and take him out for beers. He understood it was his job to help build that man's confidence. Confidence, as Wayne learned, was the building block for momentum, and momentum was why Wayne's Edmonton Oilers hoisted 4 Stanley Cups. So I guess I just want to challenge you to think about what your next great assist just might look like, because I think at the end of the day, we choose to do business with givers, not takers. Number 2, be generous. All right. Number 3, build trust. Why? Because people follow leaders who do what they say and say what they do. That's Pat Summitt. She's amazing. We lost her to Alzheimer's several years ago. At the time of her passing, she was the winningest coach in the history of college basketball, men or women. And for Pat, it was all about trust. Now, how many of you would say trust is an important part of what you do? I think we might have a full-blown trust crisis in this country right now. Are you trustworthy? Will you do what you say and say what you do? Is it fake news? How do you build trust? It's a fascinating concept because we make hundreds of trust decisions every day subconsciously, from the food we eat to the buildings we work in to the roads we drive on. When I asked Pat about her legacy before she passed, she said she didn't want to be remembered so much for being a great coach, but rather for being a great teacher. And that's how she was really able to connect with these young ladies. Not by teaching them how to be better basketball players, but how to be better human beings. And as a result, they fostered a much more intimate, authentic relationship. But when I asked Pat about the secret sauce, how she was able to become the winningest coach of all time, 8 national championships at the University of Tennessee, she said, Ross, it's not about having the best players. It's about having the right players. And as you think about your teams, I know it's so hard to hire and keep and create and recruit young new talent. As you think about your prospects, your pipeline, we're all in sales. Think about your new customers. I want you to think about this because there's so much we can learn from sports that really applies to business. Pat said, look, if it was just about money, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Dodgers, the Dallas Cowboys, they didn't win it every year. They got the most money. They can afford the best players. But that's not how sports works. All-star teams never win. Too many egos, too many team cancers. So for Pat, it wasn't about getting the best players. is about getting the right players. And as you think about your leadership style, I want you to think about this. Are you recruiting the right people that fit in with your style, with your system? Otherwise, you're just beating your head against the wall, stuffing square pegs in the round holes all day, trying to get people to do what you want them to do, and it ain't going to work. So for Pat, it was about getting the right player for her system. Not the best player, not that 5-star blue chip McDonald's All-American kid all the other coaches coveted. Pat wanted the right kid. So that meant she recruited him early. Not juniors and seniors in high school like all the other coaches, but freshmen and sophomores. Now this doubled the recruiting cycle. Men getting in her car, getting on planes, being away from her own family. But she wanted to make sure she found the right kid for her system. So she studied them. She'd watch all their videotape. She'd go to their high schools unannounced. She'd peek into classrooms to see which kids were sitting up front in the front row. Good listeners. Nice. She'd go to practice and sit in the top row of the bleachers with a big hat on, incognito, and she just observed these kids when they didn't think they were being observed. She studied interesting things like body language. Were they paying attention? Were they screwing around? And she'd go to games, but not that big game you might think they'd go to. She might go to a blowout game where they were going to destroy the team because she wanted to see how is that kid going to react in the last 10, 15 minutes. Were they going to rub their noses in it and trash talk them? Or were they going to be a cheerleader and get their teammates involved? See, Pat understood that the greatest indicator of future behavior was studying past behavior, so she took the time to get to know. She invested. She talked to their parents, their grandparents, their teachers, their coaches, their counselors, and even their friends. Friends? Yeah. People say people judge you by the friends you keep. Some of us might need new friends. But she wanted to get to know them. Which kids did drugs? Which kids got good grades? Which kids were winners in junior high and high school? Which kids were popular, likable, team leaders, captains? Which kids were coaches' kids? She loved coaches' kids. They had a totally different DNA. Which kids grew up on dairy farms like she did and shared her same incredible work ethic and spiritual values, things very important for her culture at the University of Tennessee? Which kids have respectful boyfriends, high maintenance parents? All these things mattered to Pat. And when those parents trusted her with their most prized possession, their child, to come to Knoxville, Tennessee, they were all in. These kids loved Pat. Pat Summit inspired greatness. That was her superpower, to see their potential and to pull it out of them and to coach them up. But Pat was old school. Pat came from a different generation. Pat's coaching role models were guys like Vince Lombardi, Bobby Knight, yellers, screamers, guys who used fear and intimidation as a tactic. And back in the day, it was effective. Once you got on campus, the gloves came off. Pat would yell at you, she would scream at you, she'd threaten to cut you, bench you, send you crying back to mommy. But then eventually Pat got older, and these kids got younger, and Pat realized she had to change her tune. It's hard to change. But Pat realized if you want to connect with young people today, it ain't about yelling and screaming. It's more about understanding what's in it for them. For young people today, they want to be a part of an organization where they feel valued and respected, and there's a pathway to success. And they got a boss they really like, that's a friend. And it's very different nowadays, right? I mean, so Pat changed. It's hard to change, right? I mean, she started speaking their language, texting, social media, and understanding the power of praise. Look, you'd still get that mile-long stare if you screwed up, but then always a big hug and a warm embrace and some positive words of affirmation. Hey, I'm proud of you. You're doing a great job. I'm going to text you a few YouTube videos, a few things you can work on over the weekend. I'll see you next week. Get out of here. These kids loved Pat. They worked extra hard for her. Do your people work extra hard for you? And when they graduated, and they did because Pat promised their parents, I learned that many of them would get the Lady Vols tattoo on their body at the senior ceremony. Now, how many of you guys, by a show of hands, have Knobelsdorff tattoos? Anyone? I know Cameron's got one. Yeah, we got one back there. You know, I recently keynoted Anytime Fitness's annual conference. Really cool company with great momentum. They're the largest fitness chain in the world now, more than 5,000 franchise locations globally. After my keynote, they had their 1,500th franchisee hop up on stage and get all tatted up with everyone out there hooting and hollering. These guys actually have a tattoo parlor at their headquarters with tattoo artists on staff. And it wasn't one of those little tattoos back here, peekaboo, where no one could see it. It was a big sucker, a giant purple cartoon caricature of the Anytime Fitness Running Man Dude logo tattooed on their bicep. I mean, more than a third of their franchisee owner-operators have that tattoo as a reminder about the difference between a job and a career. One's transitional, one's forever. Do you know what I learned about Anytime Fitness franchisees? I learned that they don't run gyms, and I learned that they sure as hell don't sell health club memberships. You know what they do? They help to change people's lives. Plain and simple. What do? Sell electrical consulting services, or are you changing people's lives? What you do is profound. Thank you for what you do, but it starts and it stops with trust. We talk about being the trusted advisor, saying what we do, doing what we say, but what does that really mean? I think it means a bunch of little things that collectively build stronger relationships. So today I'm here to challenge you to think a little bit differently. Number 4, focus on your mental toughness. Why? Because these days we can only really control what we can control. That is Bud Grant. I am a die-hard Minnesota Vikings fan, and I would like you all to know that I would please, like one freaking Super Bowl before I die. Is that too much to ask? We've already lost 4. I'm not getting any younger, and I need you all to know how much I hate the Green Bay Packers. Amen. These are awful people. They've been causing me pain and suffering and misery for decades. Don't even get me started about last night. It was a debacle, but I digress. I love Bud. You know, I was speaking at an event over at the Vikings headquarters this summer, and Bud was going to come say a few words, and he wasn't feeling well that night, and we lost him that night. He was going to be 96 years old. You know, it's interesting. I do a lot of work with the Vikings, and they built this amazing new practice facility in Eagan. And, you know, interestingly, just out of respect, when they built that building, they built a big corner office suite for Bud. I mean, this is a guy who had retired 4 decades earlier. It was incredible. But, you know, Bud said he retired because he said coaching was getting in the way of hunting and fishing, his true passions. I got to go fix my AV over here. But you got to respect that about the guy. But, you know, back in the day, back in the 70s, when my beloved Purple People Eaters were playing meaningful games outside, and it was 40 below zero, and the Miami Dolphins and Dallas Cowboys and Los Angeles Rams would schlep up to Minnesota, the players literally thought they were going to die. They had never experienced cold like this before, and it completely freaked them out. And Bud could never understand why. I mean, it's cold for them, it's cold for us. It's not like it was an advantage, but they were consumed with the cold. That's all they could think about. Opposing teams would bring in semi-trucks full of heated benches and blower fans and boxes and bags of hats and scarves and mittens and turtlenecks. Bud didn't allow our guys to wear gloves. They got to wear tape. Bud said, if you're thinking about staying warm, well, then you ain't thinking about playing football. So he took her out of the equation. Bud said mental toughness is focusing on what you can control. Bud used to love talking about the Alaskan pipeline. Remember the Alaskan pipeline? This is an engineering marvel. Years ago, our government spent billions of dollars. They hired the best and the brightest engineers and technicians. They had to build this pipeline from way up in Alaska, over mountains and waterways, all the way down towards the lower 48. But it was so bitter cold, people couldn't work. The project was underwater before it even began. So they had to take drastic measures. So they went out and they hired the locals to take over in these rural areas, the indigenous Inuit people, and guess what happened? Productivity doubled overnight. They couldn't believe it. So they sent up these university researchers to test them. They figure maybe there's something in the water, whale blubber, something. And guess what they found? Nothing. Turns out they were exactly the same as you and I. They just came to work every day with a different attitude. They said, yep, gonna be cold. And that was Bud's point. Shut up, it's cold. You can't control cold. It's cold for us, it's cold for them. You can't control snow, can't control rain, can't control a sloppy field, can't control injuries. And you know what, in our world, we can't control this damn economy. Or the next index yield curve that sends us plummeting into a recession. Ooh, are we gonna have a recession? I don't know. Who knows? We can't control interest rates or deficit spending or the debt ceiling. Is it going to affect your clients? I mean, interest rates are crazy. It's going to affect the commercial real estate business. It's going to affect a lot of buildings and energy projects and electrical projects. Who knows what's going to happen? There's so many things. Oh, COVID's back. Yeah. I was just in Australia a few weeks ago. It's a very different world there than it is here. There's new variants. Are they going to work with the Pfizer, the J&J, the Moderna? I don't know. Are people going to get vaxxed? I don't know. I don't want to go back into lockdown. But all this stuff is happening. There's a war in Ukraine raging on. We're like one bomb away from World War III with Putin. This is scary stuff. Look what's happening in Israel and Gaza and terrorism. And there's so many things happening in your world. There's supply chain issues and product shortages and labor issues. Can you hire anyone? Can you keep anyone? Everyone wants a 3-day work week. They want to work from home on Zoom. And now you got legalized marijuana. People are driving around high over lunch. I mean, you got problems. There's things happening in your world, right? I mean, there's cybersecurity issues, and there's data breaches, and there's Russian hackers and Chinese spy balloons and cryptocurrency, and there's so many things happening in the world, right? Hurricanes, tornadoes, forest fires, floods, droughts, El Nino, global warming, the metaverse is coming, and just when you thought it couldn't get any crazier, we had murder hornets. I know, right? Cross that one off your bingo list. But you know what Bud said? Don't worry about all that stuff. That stuff's going to happen. It's happening. None of us can do a damn thing about it. Bud said it just comes back down to the basics. Simple blocking, simple tackling. Don't complicate things. Focus on the things that you can control, like your mental health. Take care of yourselves. It's hard. Your physical health. Eat a salad. Go for a run. Go for a walk. It's hard. I live on the road. I keynote 130 conferences a year. I'm gone all the time. It's hard to stay healthy. But these are choices as leaders you have to make. People are counting on you to make the right decisions. They're modeling your behavior. You show up late, they show up late. You bitch, they bitch. So I want to challenge you to think a little bit differently about a bunch of little things that I think collectively are going to generate momentum. Number 5, lead with character. Why? Because reputation isn't what you say about you, it's what everybody else says about you. That is Harmon Killebrew, the killer. I'm bringing you guys on memory lane. These are all my childhood heroes. Love Harmon, I miss him. We lost him to esophageal cancer several years ago, and now he and Kirby are both up there rooting on our twins. You know, I told you before about Wayne Gretzky. Wayne was a servant leader. Wayne would never throw his teammates under the bus. No way. Harmon? Well, Harmon was the opposite. Harmon was a guy with no filter who actually really enjoyed throwing his teammates under the bus. It wasn't a popular thing to do, but it was the right thing to do. See, Harmon is what we call in sports a clubhouse guy. You got clubhouse gals too, but it's a very unique role. See, Harmon's contract wasn't measured in home runs and RBI like all the other players. Harmon's job was simple. Make sure little problems don't turn into big problems. Harmon was, for all intents and purposes, a mole, a spy. You got a mole? You got a mole? You got a mole? How do you really know what's going on right now with your people? How do you really know what's going on back at your job sites? You don't know. You're here right now, and you got to know. Because if you don't know what's going on, there could be all kinds of things brewing. See, baseball is a crazy game. And these managers and coaches, they're stressed out. They're overworked. They're spinning plates trying to do all these things and sound familiar as leaders. It's crazy. I mean, baseball season is 162 games long, plus preseason, plus postseason. It's twice as long as any other sports season. And there's so much drama in baseball. If you're a leader, a manager, coach in baseball, you're managing huge egos. You walk into a dugout, you got blacks, whites, Jews, Muslims, Latinos, Dominicans, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Venezuelans, Cubans, Japanese, Taiwanese, Koreans. It's crazy in there. Now you got a 4-game road trip on top of that to Toronto, Chicago, Boston, New York, LA. You got even more drama because tonight, all the cool kids, sorry, just the cool kids, we're going out to dinner. Oh, and these guys, they want to talk that language. And these guys, they want to listen to this music in the locker room. This guy hates that guy. This guy's chasing that guy's girlfriend. Look, if you're a manager in baseball, you ain't got time to deal with all that drama. Because in baseball, they got what they call a shared vision. And what that means is is that when your team sucks, they fire everybody. That's just how it is in baseball. They give you 2 years to turn it around, make the playoffs, or you're gone. These billionaire oligarch owners don't care who you are. They want to win. They want to make money. They want an ROI. So what managers have learned over the years is to lean on their veterans, those A players, to coach up the B and C players. Look, Harmon did not wear the C on his sweater like Gretzky did. But make no mistake, Harmon was the captain in practice, making sure guys worked hard enough. If Harmon saw you not work hard enough, you were going to feel it. Harmon was captain on road trips, making sure guys got in before curfew and ate right and got enough sleep and didn't do anything stupid to embarrass the team. Harmon just kept providing value to the organization. They couldn't get rid of him. It was a dirty job, but Harmon relished the role to always make sure that you as the leaders always understood what was going on behind the curtain, making sure that little problems, little relationships, little ticky-tack things didn't turn into big problems. Because as leaders, your people hear you, but that doesn't mean they're listening to you. There's a hierarchy in baseball. You want to create buy-in, it doesn't go from the top down. It goes from the top to your most senior leader, the supervisors, right? Those guys out in the field. You got to go from here to here. They're the ones that create buy-in. You ain't got a mole. You don't have that guy, that gal, that go-between that's going to be your go-between to understand what's really going on in those trucks, what's really going on at the job site. Then you don't know what's going on. And those little problems turn into big problems. So you need unfiltered people like Harmon to do the dirty work. Unfiltered. Hey, coach said team bus leaves at 9, not 9:05. Pay attention, act like a professional. Hey, run out every ground ball. I don't care if we're down by 10 runs, 20 games in the first place. These fans paid good money to be here. Some of these little kids, this might be the only ball game they get to see all year. Make it count. Several years ago, I was at an autograph show, and I was there signing my sports books, and Harmon was there. Wow. And 2 superstars for our Minnesota Twins were there, Joe Mauer and Justin Morneau. 2 guys making about $50 million between the 2 of them at the time. And there is a long line to see Justin and Joe. I mean, their line is down the hall, around the corner, so they're just signing. It was like an assembly line. They just had to get through that line. So they're just sitting there. They got their table and their handlers, you know, and no one gets too close. They just take your ball and thank you, thank you. I mean, it's like a squiggly line. Now Harmon looks over and sees this. Harmon gets upset. So very calmly, very casually gets up and he walks over and he stops his line. Guys, I'll be right back. Then he walks all the way over to Justin and Joe's line and he stops their line. And I'm watching this because sadly, there is nobody in my line. So all of a sudden the line stops and Justin and Joe look up and they say, Harmon, how you doing, buddy? What's going on? How can we help you? And Harmon says, you guys are going kind of fast, huh? And Harmon says, yeah, well, there's a long line. What's up? Well, you can slow down. Slow down. He threw these guys under the bus and let them have it. Their eyes were like saucers. They'd never been talked to like this. But Harmon let them have it. He said, if these fans are going to honor you with the privilege of asking for your signature, you show them respect. Do it the right way or don't do it at all. You see that ball? That is a Harmon Killebrew signed baseball. What you will notice about it is that it's perfect in every way. It's a long name, but it's beautifully, cursively written. They've been that way since the early 50s, growing up in Payette, Idaho, to the day he died. And Harmon didn't just stop there. Harmon would always very purposely take, and he would turn and he would center the ball. It was an extra step, but Harmon always insisted that his signature was right between the laces. So when you got home and put it on your bookshelf, it just looked fantastic. And Harmon didn't just give you the benefit that you be a vertically centered ball every time. Nope. Harmon Killebrew under-promised and he over-delivered. We love when people do that, right? He always gave you something extra underneath. Maybe it was career home runs. Maybe it was the year he was inducted in the Hall of Fame. You never knew. It was always a surprise. And while he was signing it, he'd look you in the eyes and ask you about you. Everybody's favorite subject. A memory of a lifetime. And he would consistently do it for a 1-year-old kid who was probably going to slobber on it, or some shady looking dude who was going to have it for sale on eBay later that night. Harmon Killebrew was the glue, the galvanizing force, the voice of reason that held his teams together. And as you think about your teams, as you think about how and why you lead, how to create buy-in, I want you to think about this, because there's so much we can learn from sports that applies to business. Sports is like family. You don't always like them, but you love them. And everyone's got everyone's backs. Everyone's rowing the boat together in the same direction. But I want you to think about integrity. Integrity is doing the right thing even when no one's looking. So you need unfiltered people, moles, spies, people you can trust, special relationships to understand what's really going on behind the curtain. Because as you grow, and you're already a team nearly 350 strong, and as this grows and doubles and 2x, 4x, 10x, the sky's the limit, you're going to need more leaders, more integrity, more trust. How do you do it? It's about simple relationships. It's about understanding you need unfiltered people willing to stand up and say, hey, we don't put decimal points there. Hey, we have safety protocols for a reason. OSHA's going to be here. Hey, don't put your cigarette butt out over there. And hey, hashtag me too, don't talk to her that way. You need a culture where people see something, it's okay to say something. You need people making sure that little problems don't turn into big problems. Today I'm here to challenge you to think a little bit differently about how and why you lead. Number 6, find the silver linings. Why? Because life isn't fair. Not everyone gets a trophy. So sometimes you got to make lemonade out of lemons. So I'm going to share with you now a story. The first part of my program is really about the why. This part's a little bit more about the how. And to do this, I'm going to share a story with you about how my biggest failure became my biggest success. In the end, there's kind of a cool story about something that turned out of it. But as I share the story, I want you to think about your story and about the Knobelsdorff story, why you got in this business and why you do what you do. Because storytelling, being a good listener, being a good talker, that's how you connect. That's how you build relationships. That's how you sit in the same cab with the young precocious Gen Z who's got it all figured out. I got one of those at home, maybe you do too. Or that old crusty boomer who doesn't want to listen anymore. Maybe it's a difficult customer, foreign customer. Relationship building is the key, and it starts and stops with storytelling. Now, I'm a storyteller. That's how I connect with people. We all learned about storytelling through Walt Disney, right? Reading books, watching movies. Everyone loves stories. So I'm going to share with you a story that I think is going to hopefully get you to think a little bit differently. Now, my story begins in the booming metropolis of Fairmont, Minnesota, a suburb of Goodhue, wrestling country in southern Minnesota, where I grew up as a huge sports fan. I love sports. It's always been my passion. The problem was I was just never very good at sports. In the middle is my number 10 purple Vikings Fran Tarkenton jersey. It literally turned brown because I slept in it every single night. Notice my fly is down there too. Nice. Thanks, Mom. But my whole world changed in 1980 when, as a 10-year-old kid, I watched The Miracle on Ice. This rocked my world. I mean, this fiery coach, Herb Brooks, my hero from Minnesota, led a bunch of college kids from Minnesota past the Soviet Union, the greatest hockey team ever assembled, a team that hadn't lost a game in 20 years. It was such a big deal, they called it A Miracle on Ice. Still stands as the greatest upset in American sports history. I said, Mom, Dad, I want to play hockey. Now, you have to understand something about southern Minnesota, right? Like, this is wrestling country, basketball country. This isn't like northern Minnesota, Roseau, Wool Road, International Falls, where they literally pull the kids out of the wombs by their skate blades. This is different, okay? But I begged my parents to please let me go to the Herb Brooks hockey camp. He had a hockey camp for kids that year. They said, fine, you could go. So we went to the local hardware store, and I got all the stuff, and I was what you call an ankle bender. Any hockey moms out there? I was one of these guys that could barely stand up. You know who I am. I was like, whoo! And I remember one day in practice, Herb came up to me. He was larger than life, and he put his arm around me, and he said, way to go, Ross. He knew my name because it was written with tape on my head. And he actually gave me an award. Now, I don't know if you guys are giving out awards this week, and if you get an award, congratulations. But in hockey, they give this award to the guy who sucks the most. And that was me. And Southern Minnesota hockey, it's old school. We weren't like you rich cake eaters from Edina with your fancy Zambonis, okay? Where I grew up, we had shovels. And we didn't have fancy buses driving us to games. All the farm kids had pickup trucks and vans. You'd have the chain-smoking parents up front and that nuclear hockey equipment smell back. We'd pile in, and as you're all about to see, as a freshman in high school, I became the starting left defenseman for the mighty Fairmont Cardinal / Domino's Pizza hockey team. That's right, we were pretty badass. What you can't see back there is I had a sweet mullet going on. A moulet for any of you French Canadians joining us. Or a Manitoba mudflap, I love that one. But you know, that's how it is in a small town. I got to play 3 varsity sports as a freshman. Not because I was any good, but we literally needed warm bodies. Not like today where our kids have to specialize and just play one sport, but I digress. Well, I had a choice to make as a high school senior. I could play small college football, or I could be a Golden Gopher. And as you know, in Minnesota, this is our thing. We stink at everything else. Hockey is what we do. And my family bled maroon and gold. My mom and dad were Golden Gophers. My big brothers are Golden Gophers. I love the Gophers. In the late 80s, they were a powerhouse. All these kids get drafted, play professionally. It was amazing. I went, I got season tickets. It was incredible. And then guess what? Winter semester rolls around. Turns out, they got one of these classes you can take, one of those 1-credit Phi-Ed courses the players taught, allegedly, for their scholarships. Introduction to Ice Hockey 101. So I took this class, and for 3 days a week, for 1 hour, I got to skate in Mariucci Arena alongside actual, real-life Gopher hockey players. It was unbelievable. Well, I wound up becoming friends with a bunch of guys in the team. I'd invite them over to my fraternity parties where we'd drink beer, allegedly. And after a while, I got to know a bunch of the guys, and they said, you know, Ross, you're not that bad of a hockey player. Why don't you try out for the team? Why don't you walk onto the varsity? I said, come on, you guys. I'm from Fairmont. And they said, doesn't matter. We like you. We want to hang with you. We'd rather play with you than some of these other prima donnas. You make us laugh. And this is where I learned about the most powerful soft skill of them all, the ultimate relationship builder. Likability. Really? You guys like me? You want to hang with me? Yeah, go for it. We'll pass you the puck. So I took this insane leap of faith, and I walked on to play hockey at the University of Minnesota. And it was the thrill of a lifetime. I mean, I was a pylon out there, but I was out there. And sure enough, my new buddies were passing me the puck. I was scoring goals. They were building my confidence. And after a while, I thought, you know what? Maybe I am good enough to play hockey at the University of Minnesota. But I had to do something to make a statement, something for the coaches to finally just notice me and put me in the lineup. And one day, an opportunity presented itself. It was a wholesale line change, and there it was, just me and Todd Richards, one-on-one. Todd Richards, team captain, all-American defenseman, future NHL star, future coach of our Minnesota Wild. I said, this is it. This is my moment. I said, I'm going to take out our star player in front of the coaches. They're going to have to notice me and put me in the lineup, right? I mean, it's like the first day of prison. You shank the biggest dude in the art of day one. Hope that word gets out that you're a bad man. You're going to have a very uncomfortable evening. I saw that in a movie. Okay. So Richards, he sees me coming. I mean, I'm coming at him full speed. But it's like he doesn't even brace himself. I'm like, okay, dude, this is really going to hurt. Now, Richards, on this particular practice, was wearing this really weird jersey. I'd never seen anything like this before. It was all white with a big red cross on the front and back. I assumed that could only mean one thing, bullseye. I lined up the crosshairs and wham! It was the greatest hit of my life. It was like he didn't even see me coming. Right in front of the coaches, I sent him flying. I am finally going in. It's fuzzy from here. But I remember flying through the air backwards. And I landed back there and came to, and from literally being knocked unconscious, this explains the Dane Bramage, I awoke to one of our assistant coaches, a former goon with our Minnesota North Stars, a professional fighter with one hand around my neck, the other in a fist, ragdolling me, screaming, "You idiot! What are you doing? Our team captain's wearing a Red Cross jersey today. That means he's injured." "I'm sorry, coach. I had the pizza jersey. I didn't get the memo. Well, Coach Woog called me into his office after practice. Kid, I'm sorry, but this is the end of the line. I got to let you go. Turn in your playbook. And that was the day my dream of hoisting the Stanley Cup died. I was devastated. But it turned out, unbeknownst to me, that there was another job opening on the team. Now, it wasn't quite as sexy as All-American defenseman, my first choice, but it was close. Team mascot, Goldie the Gopher. Now, there were two criteria for the job. You had to be a decent skater and a moron. I apparently fit on both accounts and became a giant, smelly rodent. That's actually me inside there. I don't think they actually cleaned that costume since the Grover Cleveland administration. But I made lemonade out of lemons. I got to become a cheerleader, which is pretty awesome. I was the only dude in that squad. I was one of the girls. And I still got to practice with the team and hang with the guys. And I had a blast being a mischievous mascot. And I got into a lot of trouble. In fact, I got into so much trouble. I think the collective blood alcohol level of Mariucci Arena in those days was about 14, so I got in a lot of trouble. But I got into so much trouble that after a game one night as a senior, a publisher approached me. And he said, "Kid, we've been watching you. We'd like to write a book about all the trouble you've gotten into. Apparently, it is not appropriate to throw Kraft cheese singles at the Wisconsin hockey players." Who knew? Cheeseheads. If you throw them just right, you get in a lot of trouble. Anyways, I said, look, I'm flattered. But other than my grandmother, who's going to want to read this book? But it kind of spawned the idea. What if I wrote a book about the history of Gopher hockey from Goldie the Gopher's point of view? That's not bad. So I called my mom and my dad and I said, Mom, Dad, I have a career announcement. I hope you're both sitting down. Now, my mom and dad worked very hard at our family's fourth generation chain of furniture stores throughout southern Minnesota, and they wanted me to go to graduate school. My two big brothers already graduated from Minnesota. They'd gone on to get their Ivy League MBAs, and they were working on Wall Street, and this is what they wanted me to do. And I said, I don't want to work on Wall Street. I want to work in sports. That's my passion, so I want to use my money to write and publish a book about the history of Gopher hockey from Goldie the Gopher's point of view. I remember the words failure, disappointment, a lot of four-letter words. This conversation did not go well, but it ultimately ended with my dad saying, you know what, fine, you can have your money, but you better not come crawling back to me when it's all gone. I said, great, I'll take it. So I dove in and I started writing this book. Now, trust me when I tell you, as a 21-year-old college senior, I knew absolutely nothing about writing books or publishing books or editing books or reading books. If you saw my grades, you know I'm not kidding. But this is my destiny. This is my purpose. 5 days into my book project, serendipitously, out of the blue, I got a phone call that changed my life. In sports, we call these defining moments where everything else changed. The phone call was from Herb Brooks, my hero, the coach of the '80 Olympic team, who's now coaching in the National Hockey League. Ross, I heard about your book. I want in. I'll be home in a few weeks. Let's get together. I'm going to help you out. Whoa. I didn't know what to expect, but we got together and it was life-changing. We got together and Herb explained to me how important this book was going to be. Herb explained to me that his passion was to grow the game and get more kids playing hockey in places like Fairmont and Austin and Goodhue and Illinois and Iowa and Texas and California and Florida. He told me that years earlier, he drove 3.5 hours through a blizzard all the way to my hometown to start a youth hockey program. He said, Ross, if you really believe in something, if you're really passionate about it, you got to get in your car and you got to go meet people face to face and they got to feel your passion, your obsession. And then you got to explain the differentiators about why your product is better than the other guy's product. Tell those parents, your kids should be playing basketball. They should be playing hockey. Give them the tools. Be a cheerleader. He said, Ross, the wider we build the base of the pyramid, the higher we can go, man. And he helped me. He called all these famous hockey players. He said, hey, get together with my buddy Ross. Take him out to lunch, help him out. He's going to write this book. It'll be good for hockey. And lo and behold, as a senior in college, I wrote my first book, Gopher Hockey by the Hockey Gopher. It became a cult bestseller. I was off to the races, and nearly 50 sports books later, I somehow made a career out of it. You know, along the way, I wanted to become good friends with Herb Brooks. And one day, years later, I got a phone call from Herb, and he said, Ross, I'm finally ready to write that book. And guess what, my friend? You're going to write it. Whoa. like the voice of God. Got to spend almost a year working on that book with my hero, my mentor. Flash forward to the weekend of August 11, 2003, 20 years ago last summer. Herb and I were golfing up in Giants Ridge Golf Course, up in the Iron Range, Bowabic, raising money for a bunch of kids, their charity, something Herb was passionate about. And Herb had to leave early that day, about the 11th hole. He had a speaking engagement, one of these for a big pharmaceutical company in Chicago. So we said our goodbyes, and I was excited. The book was almost done. We'd gotten together the night before to go over the last-minute details, and I finished out the round of golf, and I got in my car and was heading home, about a 3-hour ride home, and I turned on the radio, and I heard the news. Herb didn't make it. He was killed in a car accident driving home that day. If you're a hockey fan, you remember that moment. And I remember just driving home and crying and listening on the radio as people called in and talked about hockey and sports, and how it had been woven throughout the fabric of their communities. It bonded fathers and sons and mothers and daughters. And eventually I came upon the crash site on the side of the road where 35 and 35E come together near Forest Lake, and I saw the crash site, and someone had made a cross with a couple hockey sticks and a gopher hat, and I thought, what could I do? Because this guy really inspired me. So I decided to create the Herb Brooks Foundation. And now I donate proceeds from all my books and speeches to this wonderful organization, and it's been pretty profound. And I brought a couple of copies of the books for JT and Cameron and Carl. So those are free. Wait, actually, you know what? Because of Tiffany and Brittany and the entire planning team, you guys are all getting free books, free literature for everyone. They're on that table over there. Hey, Oprah gave away free cars, but whatever. Okay, so anyways, they're all signed and dated. I'll stick around to sign them if you want, but those are for you guys. And now, our mission, we're looking for the next Gretzky. We don't know who she is. She could be Hmong, Korean, Somali, Navajo. We're just looking to help kids play sports. So we give opportunities for disadvantaged kids, socioeconomically, kids with special needs, Down syndrome, autism, kids whose parents are overseas in the military taking care of us. We take care of them. The women's Olympic team trains at a rink we own up in Blaine at the Super Rink, and of course they've won several gold medals in the Olympics. We're so proud of them, and we get rock stars like Zach Parisi to come to our golf tournament. We've been able to raise millions of dollars to help kids. I don't care if you know the difference between a blue line or a clothesline. What you gotta know about me is I'm very passionate about getting kids interested in playing sports. And what I've learned is that when I connect with other people and they like sports, we connect. See, sports for me is a universal language. I've been able to speak on all 7 continents, one of the only speakers in the world, because everyone speaks sports. Whether I'm talking hockey in Minnesota, wrestling in Iowa, rugby in New Zealand, cricket in South Africa. So imagine if you started thinking differently about sports or things you're passionate about, and then about philanthropy. Why? Because philanthropy isn't just good purpose, it's good business. But I want you to think about all these things collectively. So there's a lot to unpack there, but let's start with a story. What's your story? Why did you get in this business? What's your passion? Why'd you stay? Storytelling is the key to relationship building. The most effective leaders are able to communicate stories and listen to other people's stories. That's how we connect. A good storyteller tells a story. And when I talk about my kids, you think about your kids. I talk about my business, you think about your business. That's how the brain works. Number 2, what are your silver linings? Look, I just told you a story about how my biggest failure became my biggest success. I got news for you. If you want to connect with someone in a cab of a truck, driving somewhere, don't tell them how great you are. Tell them how bad you bombed. That's how you connect. Not everyone connects to greatness, but everyone can connect to a setback that leads to a comeback. And number 3, how do you give back? How are you serving the communities that serve you? Are you going on the social media profiles of your new hires, prospects, of the people you work for, to be a trusted advisor of the people that you represent, right? To oversee their teams and make sure they understand what's going on, there's no problems brewing? That's all about understanding what's in it for them. Go on their social media, figure out what charity they're passionate about. Then get involved. Not with your money, that's easy, but your time. This is how relationships become very sticky. Great leaders get involved in other people's charities. They're always giving and serving. These are simple but profound things I think will really elevate your status from a good leader to a great leader. Number 7, step outside your comfort zone, take some risks. Now is the time. Why? Because we can no longer just sit back and say, well, we've always done things that way. Great leaders are willing to step out there to change, to adapt, and try something new, even if that means failing every once in a while. Now, did I mention at some point today how much I hate the Green Bay Packers? These are awful people. They've been causing me pain, suffering, misery for decades. Don't even get me started about last night. And when they decided they were going to send their guy, Brent Favre, to my Minnesota Vikings, after 16 seasons with these filthy cheeseheads torturing me week in, week out, I got to tell you, it felt very dirty rooting for this guy. He took a risk, so I took a risk. And I wrote a book about my true bipolar feelings about Brett called I Love Brett Favre. I hate Brett Favre. I love Brett Favre. I hate Brett Favre. Now, this book goes to Carl. I don't know if you're out there, Carl, but this is for your bathroom library. Thank you for having me today. Look, I didn't know if I was going to be rich or in prison when this book came out, but guess what? When the announcers on Monday Night Football started flipping my book, laughing hysterically in front of 40 million people, my book went viral. Look at that, Mom. Super Target bestseller end cap. There I am next to Rachel Ray, Dan Brown, Nelson Emil, Joel Osteen. That's 2 facings across from toothpaste. You can't buy that real estate. I'd built a brand. I thought, how was I ever going to top that? Well, it's funny you should ask, because the next year I got real cocky, I took a big risk, and I wrote that. And it was a freaking disaster. I mean, the hubris of me thinking I could write a book about politics after all these sports books. Well, get this. Walmart thought it was a clever idea. They said, we love this concept. This would work for every politician. No one likes these people. They either love them or hate them. We're covered either way. We can do it for every politician who's ever existed. This is going to be great. We're going to make a gigantic order, one of our biggest ever. What do you think? I said, I think I'd like to buy a second home in Tahiti because this is going to be unbelievable. But then Sarah decided, maybe I won't run for president after all. And that's the day I got a phone call personally from the senior vice president of sales of Walmart himself to tell me personally that I could cancel the entire order. Oh, I'd already printed the entire order. Yeah. There it was in my garage, warehouse number 1, warehouse number 2, warehouse number 3. Turned out to be a quadruple dumpster fire you don't want to see. It all went up in flames, literally. But you know what I learned? I learned it's okay to fail. Turns out for Walmart, it's a little too risky. People change their minds. But for me, it's awesome. Because the bigger the failure, the better the story. Failing's good. It's true. Go read the bio of every Fortune 500 CEO. You know what you'll read? Failure, 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 success. Turns out you fail your way to the top. That's what it's all about. I just learned fail fast and then perform the autopsy. But I want you to think about how failing might actually be good. Don't stifle your people. I know as a parent, I've smothered my kid and made sure she wouldn't fail, wouldn't not pass that test, and I regret that. Let people fail every now and then. Not in a big situation, but this is where we learn, right? I mean, look at all the opportunities that came on the heels of the Great Depression and World War II and 9/11 and the Great Recession of 2009 and the pandemic of 2020 and the re-recession of 24. Now is the time to take some risks, to hire that new person, to go outside your comfort zone, do something different. I was working with 3M recently, one of my favorite clients, walking through their innovation center in St. Paul, looking at all their thousands of products, from Post-it notes to medical devices. And I was reminded of all the tens of thousands of failures it took to get it just right. So I want to challenge you to start thinking differently about changing and adapting and failing forward and failing fast and doing things differently. Because as this company grows, you're going to need to take some calculated risks. And lastly, number 8, think hard about your legacy. Why? Because it matters to you, your customers, your families, their families. And I want to leave you 2 things. Number 1, WWGJD. What would Grandpa Joe do? That's Fairmont Furniture. My great-grandpa Joe started that store in 1939. I'll never forget the day I was in working. I was home from college. My brothers, my dad, my grandpa, my great-grandpa were all there, and a farm family came in. And they were pretty down and out in their luck. And they returned a bunch of old, used, tattered furniture to our store that they didn't even buy from our store. I said, Grandpa Joe, why would we do that? And he said, because it's just the right thing to do. We live in a small town. We take care of people, especially when they're down. They're farmers. It'll all come back. They'll have money again, and they'll remember us, but we don't want to embarrass them, so we take care of them. And sure enough, people would drive all the way from Iowa, Wisconsin, South Dakota, just to buy furniture from my family. It wasn't better furniture, it was the same. It wasn't cheaper, it was the same. But they wanted to do business with my grandpa because he always took care of people. He always did the little things. I never forgot that. So whenever I screw up, and I screw up all the time, I say WWGJD, and I put down the damn keyboard, and I pick up the phone. I'm old school, but I want people to hear my sincere, authentic voice, an apology, and accountability. Just me, eating it, owning it, eating crow, man, right? Not a text, not a DM, not an email, not me kicking the can down the road going, well, it must be someone in HR or IT or ops or someone in this division or that division. Just me saying, I am so sorry. How can I make this up to you? And you know what I've learned happens about 100% of the time when you just call someone and you just own it and you apologize? You know what they say? Thanks. Appreciate the call. Turns out that's all they really wanted. Just someone to put on their big boy pants and make it right. Because if you don't, if you deny it, people are going to go crazy, man. They're going to go on Facebook and Instagram. They're going to talk about you. They're going to go to your bosses. You're going to create drama. So you just got to pacify things by just picking up the damn phone. If your young people don't want to pick it up, teach them. It's a very teachable thing. Understand that thing does more than Instagram. You can actually make calls. And lastly, I want to leave you with my hero, Herb Brooks. Very proud to share his legacy. How many of you guys saw the movie Miracle? It's a Disney movie. If you haven't seen it, go rent it. It's a great movie. A lot of people don't know this, but Herbie actually died during the making of the movie. So the producers of Disney came to me and wanted to know what they could use from our book for the movie. So I got to work with them and meet Kurt Russell. And you know, prophetically, I just asked Herbie about his legacy. He thought about it and he said, let's go with this. The name on the front of the jersey, it's always more important than the name on the back of the jersey. Always we and us, never I and me. And they use that line in the movie, which was really cool. You know, Herb's favorite poet is a woman named Linda Ellis. Maybe you've heard of her, but she talks about the dash. So we've all got that year where we were born, and that one, it comes quick. Lost both my parents in the last couple of years. And it comes quick. We've all lost people, and beginning of the year, it's a time to think about them, to think about their legacy, about their dash. And I want you to think about your dash, about your legacy as leaders. Did you matter? Did you make a difference? Are you making a difference? Are you mentoring people, doing all the right things? You know, I think Herb really made a difference in a lot of people's lives. Herb had an acronym he used for every major decision he made in life. He called it QTL, quality time left. How much you got? Are you living a passionate, purposeful life, or are you just pushing the rock up the hill? What do you want to be when you grow up? Maybe you're looking at that new promotion, thinking about something different. Now is the time to start saying, you know what, this is what I'm going to do differently. Our New Year's resolutions haven't quite worn off yet after 24 hours. There's still time to do these things. You know, I heard this old proverb, and it really changed where I run my business. It goes like this. Days and weeks and months drag on, but years fly by. If you got kids, then you know what I'm talking about. You know that old saying, you're only as happy as your unhappiest kid. And that's why I'm trying to work hard so I can play hard, right? I live on the road with my wife now. My kid went off to college. Got to spend a week in Mexico over Christmas. It was great, but man, they get old and they leave and it's hard. So life's about stages. So I want you to think about your stage and about your legacy. You know, I think back to that iconic call in 1980 that changed my life, that defining moment. I can hear it now. Do you believe in miracles? Yes. Describing a hockey game in 1980? Well, I can't help but respectfully disagree. There were no divine interventions for Herb Brooks. For Herbie, it was just about passion and being generous and building trust and mental toughness and leading with character. But most importantly, for Herbie and for great leaders everywhere, it's about taking care of people. For Herb, it's about taking care of who he called behind the scenes people. From what I understand, a lot of those folks are going to be coming tomorrow, right? In Herbie's world, these were truck drivers, Zamboni drivers, bus drivers, equipment guys, trainers, assistant coaches. Herb treated them like gold. If they were up till 2 in the morning after a big weekend series, hanging equipment, they can always expect to find cold beer, hot pizza, and a personal handwritten note from Herbie, like a Willy Wonka golden ticket. Thanks, guys. I couldn't do it without you. And you know what? There's a whole team behind you, too. They didn't get to come to the fancy meeting at the fancy conference at the fancy hotel. They're out driving a forklift or a front-end loader, or writing up an RFP or doing some safety protocol, regulatory compliance, whatever it is. Take care of them. Treat them right. And lastly, wait, what? A bonus 9th point? That's right. Harmon Killebrew always taught me under promise, over deliver. Number 9, have fun. Why? Because we like to do business with, to be led by fun, funny, passionate, positive, nourishing people. And I know it's cliche, but it's true. Age truly is just a number. You gotta have fun. Like my buddy Julia, the Hurricane Hawkins. She's 106 years old. She's a competitive runner in Louisiana, and guess what? She wins every race she competes in. You know why? There's nobody else in her age group. How great is that? Look, being a champion, it's a choice. It's your choice. And just like Kirby Puckett every morning when you walk through those stage doors to perform for your coworkers and customers, you get to decide what your attitude is going to be. Positive, amazing, smiling, or negative and toxic. But remember, winning just for the sake of winning, it's fleeting, it's hollow, it's not sustainable. There's a fine line between cheating and gamesmanship in sports, in business, in life. Follow your moral compass, your true north. You're going to be tempted to take shortcuts along the way, but don't. Don't wind up like Lance and Bernie from hero to zero on my wall of shame. Remember, individuals win games, but it takes a team to win a championship. It has been my honor to be a member of the Knobelsdorf team for the day. I really appreciate you having me. Please stop by, grab a book. That's it. The open bar is open, right? Sorry, guys, I tried. Cheers. Good luck to you.